To begin with, I want to say that I work with Tomorrow, which is a automated frozen storage for embryos. So that would be my immediate qualification on what we're saying. Are my slides moving, Jacques?
I didn't see them move yet. I can see the first slide, but not.
There we go.
I would close it and then open it up again, because usually that has an effect. Maybe it was on presentation mode before.
Right. So
now it moves.
Now we got there. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. When I was an architect, and about 15 years ago, there was a lead initiative to try and make our work greener. And I was irritated by that because I felt that I was pretty much powerless, that no matter how hard I worked for clients that had demands, and that what little could I possibly do to change things. And that made me seem ineffective, and I felt angered. And it's turned out that actually construction creates a huge amount of waste, and there are differences that can be done and applied. So I'd like to suggest also that the culture of IVF is one of constant introspection and checking. And yes, there are big global initiatives that can make a huge difference, but if you are able to work at it personally in your small area and just change some of these aspects, first of all, you'll save a great deal of money, and second of all, you'll become more efficient. And that's a process that you go through all the time when you're making sure that your results are good and that you're actually achieving pregnancies and that your outcomes are good. So the same process can be applied to this by putting a team together and working inside. So in other words, I'm going to try and suggest that it should be financially based first and foremost. And I think that all of our speakers have pointed out how it's financially beneficial to go through this process. It makes it worth the pain in the process of doing it. And if you can put a team together within each of your organizations, you can greatly help solve these problems at a practical level. So the idea of green initiatives are basically this triple bottom line of people and the planet and prosperity. And all of that is great stuff. But if we can actually justify it by meeting our bottom lines, because it is very difficult to operate an IVF facility and operate any business in these days. So the ability to be able to apply that and make it worthwhile as a business effort really justifies the process in terms of doing it and the costs involved with it, and it will create a return for you. COVID has changed the way we do things. I mean, here we are meeting across the globe on a virtual meeting. This wouldn't have been thinkable 5 years ago, but COVID has changed how IVF is delivered. And this technological change is going to challenge and create cost impacts going forward. So the suggestion that we apply certain kinds of technologies now while you can, and then being faced with the costs of the time-lapse process by embryoscopes, automated frozen storage and storage solutions, automated ICSI by companies like Overture, Gavi's now automated vitrification. You can see that automation is coming fast. It isn't inexpensive. It will provide results and bottom line numbers that are more directly applicable. But the whole, if you look across the entire fabric of your organization, using these things now and changing so that you have less expensive energy use is going to save you money to be able to put into these technologies that are coming and are going to change the very way in which you work. So a lot of places are now going through new construction processes where they're building new labs. And one of the most economical ways to do that is to create one that is future-proof and actually doesn't rely on today's technology, but can create enough flexibility without creating redundancy and having 100 different gas lines everywhere, but enabling you to be able to move your laboratory around and flex it throughout its process of operation is actually a green technology. So if you're anticipating that, really addressing flexibility with movable furniture, location of power and outlets and gas lines is really, really important, because it will allow you to not have to spend more going forward. Once these technologies are embraced, then the practice of actually having to have patients is going to change. So your clinic area is going to change, as well as the IVF laboratory is going to change, as ultrasound and testing and consultation can be done remotely, sample collection and brought in within 45 minutes of collection, and bringing those things, instead of having to have rooms there, all of a sudden, how do you repurpose and reorganize that space that now is going to be empty and not as required? And so thinking of your IVF practice in the future as being associated with an enlarged practice of women's health, for example, in male reproductive health, can help transition into a more useful use of your ORs and your other spaces that you've spent so much time. And this really addresses the future of healthcare delivery as it will change in the future. And here I go. So converting to electricity is an important is a critical aspect of being green. Electric energy costs are spiraling upwards. Carbon costs are going way up, and so to invest right now in photovoltaics and using wind energy is actually more and more affordable and achieves more better outcomes. Generators produce a huge amount of gasoline output from fossil fuels as well. So the idea of using battery storage to be able to mitigate overnight usage and not relying so much on generators, but actually generating your own power in an emergency situation produces a much cleaner outcome, but it also makes you independent and not required on a whole series of tests. So a generator you have to test every month for years and years and years for maybe short-term use. So if you use a team inside to track your usage patterns, as were described by some of the efforts that were done either in Vitro Life or by Roshane's discussion of what was done internally, and also Donnie's discussion about what was done internally at their practice of care, you can then identify and put a group together to help you do this. So you don't have to do it by yourself. Material usage requires is another aspect about that you need to look into, and make sure that you're using locally sourced elements as much as possible and reducing the travel amount. I'll discuss that in a little bit further before, and that was also touched on a bit by Roshan as well. So simple things like putting electrical, I think that a number of my clients have reacted negatively about space detectors and using automated switching when you go in and out of rooms. And yes, it can be frustrating, and the early versions of it were very bad. But now you can set the length and duration of time. So if you're not moving for a half an hour, the lights don't suddenly go off when you're in the bathroom by yourself in your office, and then you have to start waving your hands wildly or get up and actually reactivate it. You can set longer times so that you can still achieve energy cut down in uses. More and more remote meetings. Here we are at I3, having remote meetings will really make a big difference also in this function, and using more remote functions to support your use of space. Changing out your lighting fixtures. Many people still have incandescents. I'm guilty of that, in fact, in my living room. And going to LED functions are going to greatly drop your electrical use. And it also works very much with the potential of photovoltaics. So finally, So most IVF clinics that I know of aren't in industrial areas. They're in very, very high-end areas, and the expenses involved with them are real estate based, and the whole idea of storage and using up space and the cost of real estate to have in-house storage is getting to be more and more difficult. My company TMRW is involved in automated storage of and offsite storage, and are starting to bring centralized storage spaces that are run by and digitally operated and run by technologists that are highly proficient in safe conduct of embryos is our basic idea. So this also will cut down on your transport costs. Cryoport ships something in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 1,200 samples a day. If you think about all the automobile transport and airport transport, it's an enormous number. So if you're shipping more like 400 samples to a single location, you can get a lot more efficient use, cut down on your costs, and also cut down on the transportation costs. This allows you to potentially, if you're using automation in this way, you can change your workforce to not be maintaining frozen samples, but now be utilized to make money more directly. So there's a whole series of associated costs that are involved with this, that across your entire program, where an automated solution like this could greatly help and bring your costs down, and also change the way in which you're working. So if you take this perspective with Vitrolife, you take it with future Gavi, the automated vitrification systems that are now coming online, it's very, very soon that those things will actually affect a greener result by being more efficient and also allowing you to generate more income as well. So these costs are larger than just the rent. Another big aspect is how many send-outs are you doing for PGT? How are you bundling those, and how are you sending them out? So these are just some of the aspects of green applications that you can do that are of a larger nature, that are accessible to you, and that are architecturally achieved. Thanks.